You know that quiet moment, usually late at night, when everything finally slows down. You've finished your work for the day. The notifications stop. The noise fades. And for a second, it's just you and your thoughts. And that's when it hits. Not panic exactly, but something close to it. You start thinking about money. Not in a dramatic worst-case scenario kind of way. Just this low, persistent feeling, like you're okay right now, but you're not sure how long that okay will last. So your mind starts running calculations. If I lose my job, how long would I be fine? If something unexpected happens, could I handle it? Am I actually moving forward, or just staying afloat? And somewhere in that spiral, a quiet thought shows up. I just want to feel financially free. But here's the part we don't really talk about. Most people don't actually know what that feeling is supposed to be like. We've seen the images. The big houses. The travel. The I don't check prices anymore lifestyle. But the feeling itself? That's a lot more subtle and a lot more misunderstood. Because financial freedom doesn't feel the way you think it does. And that misunderstanding is exactly what keeps people chasing the wrong version of it for years. I think most of us grow up with a very specific idea of what financial freedom looks like. It's loud, it's visible, it's obvious. You imagine waking up without an alarm, not needing to check your bank account, buying what you want without hesitation, never worrying about bills again. It's this almost cinematic version of life where money problems just disappear. And because that image is so strong, it quietly becomes the benchmark. If I'm not there yet, I'm not free. But that's where things start to get a little distorted. Because that version of financial freedom isn't really about freedom. It's about excess. And more importantly, it's about consumption. It's shaped by what we've seen other people display, not by what actually removes stress from our own lives. So what happens? People start chasing income levels instead of emotional outcomes. They think, if I just earn more, I'll finally relax. But then they earn more, and nothing really changes. The lifestyle expands. The expectations increase. The pressure shifts, but it doesn't disappear. And suddenly, the goalpost moves. Again, that's the part that feels confusing. Because on paper, things are improving. But internally, the feeling you were chasing still isn't there. And that creates a quiet kind of frustration. Like you're doing everything right, but somehow missing the point. Here's the reality that most people only realize much later. Financial freedom isn't a number, it's a relationship. Specifically, your relationship with uncertainty. Think about it. What actually makes money stressful? It's not just the lack of it, it's the unpredictability, not knowing what happens if something goes wrong. Not knowing how fragile your current situation is. Not knowing whether one mistake could set you back months or years. That's where the tension lives, and that's why simply earning more doesn't automatically solve the problem. Because income can increase, while uncertainty stays exactly the same. You can be earning well, and still feel like everything depends on your next paycheck. You can have a good lifestyle, and still feel like you're one unexpected expense away from stress. So when people imagine financial freedom as this big dramatic shift, they miss what it actually feels like in real life. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's quiet. Almost surprisingly quiet. Let me explain it in a way that's a little more grounded. Imagine two people. The first person earns a high income. They live well, nice apartment, good lifestyle. Everything looks stable from the outside. But their expenses are high. The commitments are fixed, and most of their financial structure depends on that income continuing exactly as it is. If something changes, things get tight quickly. Now the second person. They might earn less. Not dramatically less, but they've built a small buffer. Their expenses are more controlled. They've created a little space between what they need and what they earn. Nothing extreme. Just enough. Now here's the interesting part. If both of them lose their income tomorrow, who feels calmer? It's not the one who earned more. It's the one who had margin. That's what financial freedom starts to feel like. Margin. Space. Breathing room. Not needing everything to go perfectly for things to be okay. And this is where the emotional shift happens. Because once you understand this, your priorities start to change. You stop asking, how can I make the most money possible? And you start asking, how can I reduce the pressure in my life? Those are very different questions. One leads to constant chasing, the other leads to intentional decisions. You begin to notice things you didn't notice before. Like how much of your stress actually comes from fixed obligations. Rent that stretches you a little too far. Subscriptions you don't think about. Lifestyle choices that quietly lock you into needing a certain level of income. None of these are bad on their own. But together, they create a system where your life becomes less flexible, and flexibility is a huge part of what freedom feels like. Because when you have flexibility, you have options. And when you have options, you don't feel trapped. There's also something else that changes, and it's a bit unexpected. Your definition of enough becomes clearer. Not smaller necessarily, just clearer. Instead of chasing a vague idea of wealth, you start identifying what actually matters to you. What kind of lifestyle do you genuinely enjoy? What expenses bring real value? What kind of work feels sustainable for you? And once you have those answers, something interesting happens. You stop needing extremes. You don't need to double your income overnight. You don't need to take on unnecessary risk just to get ahead faster. Because you're no longer trying to escape your life. You're trying to stabilize it, and that's a very different energy. It's calmer, more deliberate, less reactive. This is usually the turning point. The moment where financial freedom stops being a distant milestone and starts becoming a direction, because you realize it's not something you arrive at one day. It's something you build, gradually. In small, almost invisible ways. Every time you increase your savings a little. Every time you avoid an unnecessary financial commitment. Every time you choose stability over short-term excitement. None of these feel dramatic. But they compound. Not just financially, but psychologically. You start to trust your situation more. You stop checking your account with that subtle tension. You stop feeling like everything is fragile. And that trust is a big part of the feeling you were chasing all along. Now, this doesn't mean life becomes perfect. You'll still have responsibilities. You'll still have goals. You'll still want to improve things. But the emotional baseline changes. Instead of operating from pressure, you operate from stability. And that affects everything. The kind of decisions you make. The risks you take. Even the way you think about time. Because when you're not constantly worried about money, time starts to feel different. You're not rushing as much. You're not making decisions just to relieve short-term stress. You can think a little further ahead. And that creates a sense of control that's hard to describe, but very easy to feel. So what does financial freedom actually feel like? It feels like not needing every month to go perfectly. It feels like knowing that a bad week, or even a bad month, won't completely throw you off. It feels like having choices, not unlimited choices. Just enough. Enough to say no when something doesn't feel right. Enough to pause instead of panic. Enough to make decisions that align with your life, instead of reacting to pressure. And maybe most importantly, it feels like quiet, not the absence of responsibility, but the absence of constant financial noise in your head. If you're wondering how to move toward that, it's usually less complicated than it sounds. It starts with awareness. Understanding where your money is going, and how much of your current stress is tied to fixed obligations. Then gradually creating space. A small buffer. A little gap between income and expenses. Not extreme cuts. Not aggressive changes. Just steady adjustments. And over time, that space grows. And as it grows, something subtle happens. You stop feeling like you're behind. You stop feeling like you need to catch up to everyone else. Because you're no longer measuring progress the same way. You're measuring it in stability. In flexibility. In how calm you feel when you think about your future. And that's probably the most overlooked part of all of this. Financial freedom doesn't announce itself. There's no moment where everything suddenly changes. It's more like you wake up one day and realize you haven't felt that underlying stress in a while. You didn't notice exactly when it faded. But it did. Quietly. Gradually. Gradually. Through small, consistent decisions that didn't seem important at the time. So if you're still in that phase where money feels a little uncertain, a little tense, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just in the part of the process that doesn't get shown very often. The part where things are improving, but the feeling hasn't caught up yet. That takes time. Because financial freedom isn't just about changing your numbers, it's about changing how secure those numbers make you feel. And that kind of shift doesn't happen overnight. But it does happen. Not through big dramatic moves, but through steady intentional ones. And over time, those small changes add up to something meaningful. Not a flashy life, not a perfect life. Not a perfect life, but a stable one. A flexible one. A life where money is still part of the equation, but it's no longer the thing that quietly controls how you feel every day. And that's a version of freedom that doesn't look impressive from the outside. But from the inside, it feels exactly the way you hoped it would. Calm,